Dear LLSP alumni and alumni, welcome to our 25th of March 2021 Lunch and Learn interview. Our speaker today is Ms. Nazima Qureshi, a registered dietitian and nutritionist. She also has a master's in public health degree in nutrition and dietetics from Toronto University. Ms. Qureshi is the co-founder of the Healthymuslims.com, which is dedicated to helping Muslims make healthy eating and fitness the easy choice. She provides evidence-based and practical online programs to clients worldwide, hosts in-person and online events, and provides culturally relevant tips to make lifestyle changes. She's the co-author of the Healthy Ramadan Guide, a complete meal plan and fitness program. With the blessed month of Ramadan almost upon us, we thought it would be appropriate to invite Ms. Qureshi to share her insights with us on how to have a healthy Ramadan. In keeping with that desire, we are encouraging our viewers to please use the chat feature to ask questions of Ms. Qureshi. We will be allocating 5 to 10 minutes at the end of the interview to address your questions. Nazima, I can tell from your LinkedIn profile that you've had a focus on diet, nutrition, and exercise as part of a healthy lifestyle for a long time. Please tell us what inspired you to found the Healthymuslims.com.
First of all, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really looking forward to talking a little bit about what I'm most passionate about, which is nutrition and health. So in terms of kind of what sparked, I guess I should probably talk about what sparked my interest and then talk about what how we founded the Healthymuslims.com. So growing up, I actually never really thought about nutrition. I just kind of ate, the food that my mom prepared for me. It wasn't until I was about 14 years old when, my dad was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And so he was going to the dietitian. And so I accompanied him that time. And so that was the first time I realized there is this connection between what we eat and the impact it has on our health. And so that was literally when I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to be a dietitian. But at the same time, one thing that I noticed is my dad came home and he didn't actually follow any of the recommendations. And so the thing is, from an outside view, it might seem like, oh, this person is being non-compliant, but I actually realized that it was because there was a lack of cultural, sensitivity and competence in terms of the nutrition education provided to my father. And so when I went into, pursuing my undergrad and my master's, my goal was always to, provide nutrition education, but from a cultural lens, something where people don't feel like they have to give up the foods they love and the way they've been eating in order to eat healthy, right? A lot of the messaging around healthy eating is about, it looks in a very certain way, like, oh, salad and chicken, and, there's no room for cultural foods. And so for me, I was like, okay, well, there's something missing here. Like, why do we all have to eat that way in order to be healthy? And so that's kind of why over the past, so I've been practicing as a dietitian for almost 6 years now. And so right from graduation, didn't really pursue like a 9-to-5 job, but started kind of creating a blog, a website. And I found that there was so much interest. Number one was, women were starting to see someone that looks like themselves talking about healthy eating and fitness, right? It was someone they could relate to. And now all of a sudden I was talking about nutrition within the lens of foods that they could recognize. And then, this past year we launched the Healthymuslims.com. So I launched it with my husband, who is a personal trainer and fitness expert. And so he also brings in kind of, this idea that fitness doesn't have to mean like you spend hours in the gym or, you become big and bulky and you have to have all these muscles. It's about, functionality. It's about, reducing aches and pains. It's about being active and just improving your quality of life. And so for us, really the goal has been to make healthy eating and fitness the easy choice, regardless of how busy you are, right? Like that's really been our goal. So last year we launched the Healthy Muslims with the launch of our Healthy Ramadan Guide. So this was like the first print edition of the book. And there's really nothing like this out there, where it's put together the scientific evidence, but then pairs it with the cultural aspect, where there's, foods that you can enjoy, where it becomes something that's a lot more enjoyable, a fitness program that you can do, despite not having any equipment. So that's kind of where that was our goal.
Wow. Well, I saw you held up the book, so, you know, I will at some point hold up my copy of it. I'm so glad to have got it. It really is a fantastic book. So tell me a little bit, though, about how you see the role of exercise in the context of a healthy lifestyle. Did you participate in sports as a child? Do you still participate in any kind of competitive or group sports? I don't know, badminton, volleyball, whatever. How about have the constraints of leading a professional life led you to focus more on individual sports that you can fit into a busy schedule? So, you know, tell us how you manage, and of course, I know you have children. How do you manage to balance work, family life, and exercise?
So I guess growing up, I wasn't really like an active person in the sense where I wasn't a part of any sports. I was always more of the bookworm. I would spend hours studying. It wasn't until my university years where I was interested in kind of working out. So I remember at that time they had this one women's only learn to strength train and lift weights. So it was at that time, and especially me being a hijabi, like that was, you know, wearing a headscarf, that was a huge constraint where I didn't feel comfortable walking into a mixed gym, or I didn't feel comfortable, you know, playing sports with my headscarf. So it wasn't even something that I would try to do. So that was the first time there was this women's only class offered by the university. So that was kind of my first introduction. And it wasn't until I actually finished university that they started offering women's only workout times at the gym. So I was like, that's amazing. Like you know, I do start seeing more of those spaces come out and be more kind of, you know, open and inclusive. So that's been amazing. But I find in my adulthood years, so basically after undergrad, I went into my master's, I really started, you know, enjoying working out. So at the gym before I had kids. And then once I had kids, of course, I wasn't able to go to the gym as much, but just working out at home. And then once they were kind of, you know, self-sufficient where I could leave them for a few hours, I would always kind of go to the gym. Now, of course, we're in a COVID situation where the gym isn't really happening. But I find really over the past, once again, 5-6 years, finding different things. And I think one thing I've really focused on is finding something I enjoy. So what I enjoyed maybe, you know, last year doesn't necessarily mean I'm doing that right now. So I know after my second daughter was born about 3 years ago, I had a goal that I wanted to run a 5K run without stopping. So consistently running. And so I was able to do that when she was 6 months old. So it was lovely. My husband and my girls were standing at the finish line. And so that was something that I loved doing. So I did running for a year. More recently, I actually picked up softball. So softball there's a sisterhood softball here in Toronto. And so it's all for Muslim women. And it has been such a welcoming space. I would have never imagined starting up a sport as an adult because I've never played. I didn't even understand a lot of the terminology, but it was so welcoming to basically anyone who's interested. And so I remember I've been a part of that league for about 3 years. And for the first year, there was probably like a handful of women coming together, trying to make enough people for teams. And now they're at almost 80 people. Wow. And so it's really quite something. And to see, you know, Muslim women, you know, they have their busy lives and we all come together Sunday mornings to play softball. And so that's been something that I've been really enjoying over the past few years. And then also like, you know, that's obviously only when we have good weather, but despite that, I'm always, you know, especially with my husband being a personal trainer, we're all about being more active with the family. So depending, it's very, for us here in Toronto, it's very weather dependent. So in the wintertime, we're ice skating, we're doing winter hikes. In the summertime, we're outdoors a lot. So it's really about making it enjoyable and incorporating the family as well.
I think it's wonderful because your children are still young enough that you can kind of drag them along. Just wait until they become ornery teenagers. You know, it'll be a lot harder to get them to focus on family-related stuff.
Yeah, they actually want to spend time with us, right? So we'll take it.
Enjoy it while you've got it. And why don't you also share, I love your daughter's names. Share with us your daughter's names.
My daughter's names are Khadija and Aisha.
And who's the older one?
Of course, it's Khadija. That was
of course.
Yeah, when we always loved the name Khadija, and we thought, you know, with our second daughter, we needed a name just as strong. And so, of course, yes. Aisha was the name for her. So.
And do they fight? Probably.
No, they're actually
friends?
they're quite close. So they're 2 years, 4 months apart. And they are they're essentially best friends. They have little itty bitty fights, and I tell them to figure it out themselves. So right now they're 5.5 and 2.5. And they just they spend their whole days together. It's been quite a pleasure to see them grow.
And are they good about food, or are they in the picky stage?
So I don't like classifying anyone as a picky eater, because I find even as adults, we have likes and dislikes. And research has actually shown that for children, sometimes you have to introduce a food anywhere from like about 12 to 20 times before they like it. So they're still developing their taste buds. And I'm sure, something you've eaten like as a child thinking you don't like it, and then you eat it now, you're like, hey, this is actually good, right? So I never label as like, oh, a lot of times parents will be like, oh, she's not going to eat that. Like, so we all eat the same thing. There's no such thing as, oh, mom and dad's healthy food and then the kids' food. We all eat the same thing. And interestingly enough, like that's how we were raised too. Like everyone eats the same thing. And so we do eat all the same thing. They're pretty good at trying out things. And I also like my biggest focus is making sure they have a good relationship with food. Now, right now we do have our spring weather coming up, so we'll be doing a lot of gardening. So I like teaching them about the process of growing their own food and getting them involved in the kitchen, and they're more likely to kind of try out new things.
MashaAllah. It reminds me of when my children were little and we didn't have a garden yet, but I still used to grow tomato plants in containers and little beans, string beans, so that they would go out every morning and look on the balcony to see what was ripe and ready to eat. And it did foster a much more healthy relationship with food. So when you publish your second edition, you need to add a section on family-friendly gardening.
I agree. Yeah, that does. I will say one of my favorite things to grow is carrots, because the kids have no idea what to expect, and you pull it out of the ground. I mean, even for adults, it's such an amazing thing. And so, it's really been quite a pleasure for them to experience. And the hardest thing is they'll be picking and they're like, can we just eat it? And I'm like, can we just wash it first?
Oh, but it's so good with some crunchy dirt attached to it.
For sure.
Oh gosh, I miss it when my kids were that young. It was a lot of fun. Well, I said I was going to hold up your book, and here it is again. It's a really lovely book. I'm so glad that I got it. But in keeping with the holistic approach, I see that you have taken this comprehensive approach to the structure of the book. You have sections on fasting with diabetes, a very common concern, how to deal with gastrointestinal discomfort, also something we all know from time to time, tips on fasting while breastfeeding, as well as how to plan for a healthy sahur and iftar. And the guide includes a 4-week meal plan complete with shopping list, which I imagine is really helpful to the busy professional. And then I also see that towards the end of the guide, you provide advice on exercising during Ramadan, including some sample workouts and photos for how to carry out the exercises. You can tell your husband I tried them out recently, and they were excellent. So were you responsible for all of this material? Probably not, because I know you had the active help of your husband.
Yeah, of course. So he took over kind of the fitness portion, and our goal with this book was not only for it to be educational, but essentially be this tool where you could just take it and you have this like roadmap on, exactly what to do during Ramadan, right? And so that was our goal. And so that's why you'll see kind of the informative piece at the beginning, but then it's like okay, this is what you can do. Even with like the recipe section, it's not just about trying one recipe, right? It's about the pattern of eating. So the only way you can do that is when you have a meal plan mapped out, and, simplifying it with the grocery list and things like that. And similarly for the workout. So my husband, Bilal, he basically took lead over that, and how to create, one is, sharing the importance of working out, but then also creating programs for depending on, where you're at. So there's the gym workout option and there's a home workout option, right? And it's interesting. So obviously we published this. This was written before COVID kind of kicked in, and we literally launched it in March, April, same time. And so we were saying, wow, like that at-home workout section is super helpful because
good to come in handy.
Yeah, I mean, it just worked out so wonderfully. And then there's also that one section about the daily mobility. So despite at where you are in your your fitness journey, aches and pains are really common, especially during Ramadan. You might find your those are kind of aggravated a little bit. So that daily mobility routine is just like a 5-minute routine that will help kind of alleviate a lot of those aches and pains and avoid them. So we kind of really mapped that out. And I think that was really our goal, is to make sure that it's not just the education, it's something that you can do. And mashallah, last year when we launched it, we reached over 1,000 people, 30 different countries. So we do ship worldwide. And the interesting thing was to have people worldwide, but then they were all able to benefit from it. They all enjoyed the recipes. There is, different cultural backgrounds and different preferences. And for us to see like the community coming together with something like this, it was a real testament to, how the book turned out.
Well, now you've piqued my interest. You say you have worldwide penetration. Okay, so where is the farthest person living who ordered, residing, who ordered your book? Anybody from some really unusual places?
Honestly, we've had so many. I know South Africa. So interestingly enough, because of COVID, there was so many shipping restrictions at that point. So some people didn't even get their book until well after. But yeah, South Africa, definitely Europe, Asia, it went everywhere essentially. Australia, we actually just packed some books for Australia just the other day. So worldwide shipping, and really that's one of our goals, has been to be able to have something that's affordable, that's simple, because I mean, essentially this could be a program, like a full program. And
yes, it could.
Yeah. So last year we had asked for feedback after the month had ended. And I was actually just going through those emails yesterday, and the response, there was someone who said that their diabetes was better than it ever has. And other people were saying they lost weight. Like, this is basically equivalent to being able to work with someone. It's really laid out in a way where it's simple to use. And so to see people actually seeing those results in Ramadan, where normally you come out of this month feeling really lethargic, really low in energy, and we usually blame it on the fasting. We say, oh, because I've been fasting all month. But no, the reality is you've actually been feasting all month in that small window, right?
Yes.
And that's why you're ending off this month feeling really weak, aches and pains, and sometimes even gained weight, right? So that's why. So we're really focusing on that small window. And essentially our goal is, if you're able to eat better, be more active, be more energized, you're able to do more ibadah. You're able to take part in more worship as well.
What you say is very interesting, because living I grew up in Egypt, it's a Muslim country, and I have memories of Ramadan in Egypt, and it included, as you alluded to, this practice of after iftar, people would go out and visit each other. And of course, when they would visit, there would always be tea and cakes and, more sweet stuff. And you're right, after a few weeks of this, people had put on weight and they were feeling lethargic. But having now lived outside of a Muslim country for many years, I find that while I really miss the social aspect of Ramadan, not being in the middle of a Muslim culture makes it easier to plan a healthy Ramadan, because you're not so inclined to do the rounds of everybody's houses and eat too much and so on and so forth. So I'm just really impressed by how much thought went into this Healthy Ramadan guide, including in particular, I really love the way you've added shopping lists in there. If you want to actually just turn off your brain and let Nazima organize you, you can just do it. Did you by any chance get people responding to you and sending you recipes?
So actually we do have, so anyone who purchases the book has access to a private Facebook support group. So throughout the month of Ramadan, especially being worldwide, right? If there's an ingredient you don't have, that is not local to you. So we'll have people messaging and say, hey, I'm not I'm not familiar with this ingredient, or I don't have access to it. What can I do? And so there was a lot of that community base there. So there was that piece happening there. And you mentioned me organizing. I just realized, so yesterday I announced I'm offering a free 5-day challenge of get your kitchen Ramadan ready. So that's actually starting April 2nd. I'll share the link with you so you can share this with your audience. But basically what that is, 5 days of organizing your kitchen so that it's all kind of organized for Ramadan, because you don't want to go, even if you don't purchase this book, I still want to, give you some sort of sense of organization, and you're kind of going into this month with a little bit of kind of balance. So that's another option too. It's an email 5-day challenge. So that's something, people can join in worldwide as well.
Well, you heard it here, but people, there's a community on Facebook that's built around Nazima's Healthy Muslims. You should check it out. Well, moving on, I did want to say something about the cultural diversity of the Islamic Ummah. And in particular, just now, I was remembering what Ramadan was like for me when I was growing up. And I was reminded of a favorite story that one of our fellows here at Karama likes to tell. He's from Egypt, married a woman from, I believe it's Bangladesh. And in their first Ramadan, they had a bit of a cultural kerfuffle over what was the proper thing to eat after you had broken your fast. And as an Egyptian, he was quite convinced that it should be soup, but she was quite convinced it should be something else. So I noticed in your Healthy Ramadan guide, you've really made an effort to go out there and solicit recipes from many different Islamic cultures. But share with us a little bit what Ramadan was like for you and your family growing up. What kind of food traditions were you following?
Yeah, so we come from a South Asian background. So my parents grew up in India. I was essentially raised here in Canada. So, however, one thing, so with the South Asian culture in Ramadan, fried foods, that's what you usually open your fast with, is fried foods. So we would have that. Sometimes there would be like a fruit salad, but there's always like sugar in there, fruit salad with sugar. And so that, and then you kind of have those snack type appetizer foods. And then you have like dinner. So that's what it was. And we always had very like our cultural food. And so when I started cooking, and I think that was probably my university years, I started cooking at home. And then more so once I kind of got married and had my own kitchen, I used to bring in a lot of the flavors that I kind of loved growing up, which were the South Asian flavors. But then also I had this like, I guess, Western side of me where I was like, okay, I kind of want to merge these two. And then I've also had, Middle Eastern friends and, also all sorts of friends. So I loved all of these flavors. And I especially like thinking about the book, I didn't want it to be just a South Asian book or just one culture. And of course, like you said, there's Muslims come across many different cultures. And so I wanted to be able to capture basically essentially good tasting food that, as many people would enjoy it. And so you'll see one of these recipes is probably the biggest fusion is chapli meatloaf. So yes, meatloaf, I never grew up eating meatloaf, by the way. I didn't even know, but I would hear other kids saying they had meatloaf for dinner. And I was like, okay, like, what is this meatloaf? And so when I got married, I would look up the recipes and I was like, this seems very bland, not something I'm interested in. And so I took the chapli kebab. So this is like a South Asian, in some Afghan cultures as well, the chapli kebab, a lot of those flavors. And I merged that into the meatloaf. And so this is like one of the favorites in our house, but I hear a lot of people saying they love the chapli meatloaf. Like it's something that is basically a creation of merged flavors. And so that's something I did. I also have like a za'atar whole chicken, right? So the za'atar is the Middle Eastern flavors. Yep. And so my South Asian in-laws, they love even the Middle Eastern foods, right? Like all of the flavors. So I think that was the biggest piece, is making it enjoyable. I will say, every single recipe has a picture, which I think is super important, because a lot of times you're like, should I make this? What's it gonna look like? Yeah, what is this gonna look like? And so that was something that was important to us, where we wanted to kind of incorporate pictures for every single recipe, so you feel excited. And so as you can see, there's rice. It's like a wholesome wholesome food, balanced food, and that's really what we focus on. There's also another feature we have in this book is we have legends for, so anyone who has dietary restrictions,
Yes.
we have these small legends here. So gluten-free if it's vegetarian and dairy-free. And so there are these options if you have any of these restrictions. Even if, say, you're dairy-free and you want to make a recipe that isn't dairy-free, you have access to the Facebook group, so you can ask for swaps. Similarly, if you're vegetarian, you could post in the group and I'll share those swaps with you as well. So that's something that I've also thought about, because I know, across many different cultures or different, even, different life stages, you might have different restrictions as well when you're eating. Oh,
of course. Well, maybe, as I say, in the next edition, you'll have a whole section on Ramadan friendly Italian food.
Oh, there is a pasta.
Oh, yes. One. I tried to pack in as much.
Yeah, I tried to pack in as much variety as I could to keep everyone happy.
Okay, everybody, go to that Facebook group and start exchanging recipes, and Nazima will rein you in if you're putting in too much fat or other kinds of things. Well, Nazima, thank you so much for sharing all this really useful information with us. Now, we don't normally take questions from the audience, but today, just for you, we're making an exception. And I will now ask our amiable host, Rahma Abdelalim, to read out some of the questions that have come in both during the interview and earlier. So, Rahma, if you would like to join us.
Yes. So the first question we have, and the first two are kind of related. What foods will help sustain you through the day without feeling hungry? And what foods will give you energy that you can eat for sahur?
Okay. So when it comes to sahur, I find there's usually 3 different types of people. So number one is you'll kind of sleep through sahur. Maybe you'll have a couple sips of water, but it's kind of an awkward time, so you just kind of skip sahur. The second type of person will be someone who has breakfast type food, so maybe cereal, something quick. And then the third type of person will be, having dinner type foods as well. So I remember growing up, my mom would be like, no, she would make the curries and the flatbreads and make sure that we have to have dinner at sahur time. Otherwise we're gonna be hungry throughout the day. And so now I've kind of switched, but really I have 5 components that you wanna make sure you're having for sahur. I will say that waking up for sahur is important. Of course, it's a sunnah as well. And it's also your last opportunity to nourish your body before your long fast, right? Depending on where you are in the world, it's anywhere from 12 to 18 hours, right? Give or take in terms of your fast. So it is the last opportunity. The first few days you may not have an appetite because you're not used to eating in the middle of the night, essentially, but just wake up. Even if you're having a little bit, I find over the days, you kind of build an appetite and get used to it. So 5 components, usually sahur time, people usually turn to something that's a little bit more carb heavy because it's quick, right? So whether it's a bowl of cereal or if it's dinner type foods, like a bowl of rice or, and so what happens with that is it breaks down and into simple sugars really quickly. So it spikes your blood sugar levels and it comes down just as fast. So that's when, by the time you've woken up for your day, you're already feeling hungry, 7, 8, 9 a.m. And so a lot of times people are like, well, what's the point of me even eating sahur if I'm hungry? And so the reason for that is because you're eating a lot of fast digesting food. So we want to kind of shift that. So switch the carbohydrates to whole grain carbohydrates. So breakfast type foods would be like oatmeal or whole grain sprouted bread. Dinner type foods would be like quinoa, bulgur, brown rice. And then you're going to pair it with something like a protein and healthy fat. So protein, breakfast type foods would be your eggs, your Greek yogurt, and then dinner would be like your chicken, your fish, your lentils, your chickpeas, right? So you can have that. And then you also want to have some sort of healthy fat. So whether you're kind of cooking in a little bit of olive oil, that's sufficient, or adding a little bit of avocado or nuts or seeds. And so these are, right? Not all, you don't have to eat all of this.
No.
There are options. The fourth category you want to incorporate is a veggie and or fruit. So if you can do both, so if you're doing eggs, maybe add some veggies in there to make it a veggie omelet, and then you can do a bowl of strawberries there. However, if you're doing something like oats, it may not make sense to add veggies. Maybe you'll just add some fruit. That should be fine. And then the last component is water. So making sure you're drinking enough water at sahur time as well. So with all of these components, you might be thinking that's a lot of food to eat at sahur. So you don't have to eat large amounts of food. These are just components. So I'll give you some examples that are really simple from the book as well. And actually, if you go on the website, so I'll share the website in a minute, but this is something like the overnight oats. One of our favorite is our family favorite recipe. This has all of the components I talked about, right? And it's just a small jar. It's something we make ahead of time. So we're not spending a lot of time kind of preparing in the middle of the night. We make it ahead of time and we're just kind of waking up, eating it half asleep, right? And it has all the components. And what that does is it releases the sugars into your bloodstream slower. You feel more energized throughout the day. Now, that's not to say you might still feel hungry throughout your fast, and that's okay, but your energy will be kind of maintained. You'll feel a lot better as well. So that's kind of the key. And we're still a few weeks away from Ramadan. Try out a few different options for suhoor, do some nafil fasts and see what suhoors work ideally for you. I find everyone has like an ideal suhoor that works really well for them. For us, it is the overnight oats that we just stick to throughout the whole month. But yeah, give it a try. And that's kind of the best way to determine what food would be the best for you.
Okay, well, you can answer this next question. Is it okay nutritionally to just drink water for suhoor? We're often not hungry after a few weeks into Ramadan. And related to that is, how much water should we be trying to consume prior to beginning our fast and after we break our fast?
Yeah, so in terms of, you do want to make sure you're kind of waking up for suhoor. If you absolutely cannot eat, there is this energy bite recipe. So I have a couple recipes on my website as well, but these are just energy bites that you can make that are date-based, oat-based as well. So this is for kind of the average person that cannot eat suhoor at all. If you want to at least make these, this would probably be a better option than you skipping suhoor altogether. So that would probably be the last option there, but definitely want to be eating something at that time. In terms of water intake. So water intake, you should be having the same amount of water in a fasting day as you would on a regular non-fasting day. So say for your body, 2 liters is kind of the goal on a regular day, then you're getting in 2 liters in Ramadan. So how to break that down? Ideally, you're getting at least a liter at suhoor time. Now that sounds like a lot of water. So once again, start getting used to, as soon as you wake up or when you wake up for Fajr, drinking a larger amount of water. You can do that over the next 2 weeks and you'll start getting used to it. And then also, so even if you can't do say a liter, 500 ml, at iftar time, when you open your fast, open it up with another 500 ml. So that's 1,000. And then you have from basically iftar to bedtime to finish up that water. So that is super important. And also keeping in mind, Ramadan is 30 consecutive days. So a lot of times you almost feel like, okay, what day are we on? But really trying to focus on every single day, getting enough water. Also maintaining, you can also make sure you consume a lot of high water content fruits. That will help you stay hydrated as well. So things like melons and berries, these are really high water content. So that's really great to have at suhoor time as well as iftar time.
Okay, and you were talking in ml. So for our American audience, 500 mLs is 1 bottle of water that you can buy, the 16.9 fluid ounces. It says 500
yes.
mLs. So if you look at it, if you look at your bottle of water, you can see that. Okay, the next question is, what are the best snacks, which I think might be those little bites that you just talked about, for people who like to stay up all night praying during Ramadan? What's the best snack for snackers?
Yeah, so if you are staying up later, and I find sometimes there's cultural tradition with, if for people that are kind of going for night prayers, I mean, depending on what the context is right now, usually when you come home, I've heard people say they'll have fried foods or dessert at this time too. And like you alluded to, some Middle Eastern countries have kind of the whole night of eating. But I find even here, like in Canada, we hear like, people have their family traditions. So what I will say is what you eat in that late evening, or if you're staying up that late night, is going to significantly impact how you feel in your next day fast. Okay. So if you're eating a lot of fried foods and that energy, everything kind of transfers over into the next day. So be mindful of that. Number one, keeping up your hydration. So if you're staying up, that's a great opportunity to continue to drink your water throughout the night. And then also, so two things you want to incorporate in your evening snack is protein and fiber. So, things like nuts and some fruit. Those energy bites are great if you're having like sweet cravings, but also if you're more of like a savory person, you don't want anything. There's also a lot of savory options here as well. So like you can do like a trail mix option as well. This is probably one of my favorite pictures here, which is a ice cream, but it's all natural. So it's made with only fruit. So this is a perfect example of you can enjoy desserts and satisfy your sweet tooth, or if you're having a savory craving, but still make it healthy, right? So that these are things to be mindful of. And I think there is a huge social aspect of Ramadan. So if you're even if you're eating healthier, planning it nicely and making it a family thing and making it enjoyable will also make it something that is sustainable and you're able to practice.
Okay, I think we have 2 or 3 more questions. The last 2 are related, but the next question is, when and how should we be taking vitamins during Ramadan?
Okay, so in terms of vitamins, you don't need to necessarily start any vitamins in Ramadan. You may be taking certain ones. I'm not going to recommend any because I find vitamins is very specific to the person on which ones they're going to be taking. So if you are already taking them based on your specific circumstance, you can add them in with suhoor. That shouldn't be a problem. One thing to keep in mind is you always want to start when you're thinking about, okay, what supplements should I be adding in order to eat, to be healthier? You always want to start with food first. I find people love spending money on a lot of supplements. Like that's the first thing is they'll tell me what vitamins to buy. But you're not going to see that benefit until you don't fix the foundation. So the foundation is how you're eating. If you're opening up your fast and having fried foods every single day, I don't know if that multivitamin is going to really benefit you that much, right? So really, really focus on that foundation of you're eating healthier, and then look at, spending money on those supplements. I always hear people saying like, eating healthy is expensive. But if you shift kind of your priorities in terms of what you're spending your money on, and if you have a specific budget, maybe not spending it on the supplements and instead spending it on the fresh produce. That would probably be the more important aspect. And then also when determining what supplements you should take, sometimes, having that discussion with your doctor, doing a blood work will sometimes identify any sort of deficiencies in which you actually need to take certain supplements.
Okay, so the last 2 questions are related. If you are doing paleo, keto, plant-based diet, can you continue that during Ramadan? And do you have any suggestions on how to make sure you're getting, say, enough calories with a plant-based diet during Ramadan?
Okay, so I would say, number one, understanding what your goal is, first of all, right? So I feel like these are actually really different diets. So keto, a lot of times people do it for weight loss. And so if it's something you're doing, number one, don't start a new diet on day one. And the book here isn't a diet. It's really about lifestyle. It's about incorporating a balanced way of food. But if you're trying to do you're like, okay, I want to lose weight in Ramadan, I'm going to do keto, I'm going to do everything all at once. Don't start day one of Ramadan. If it's something you've been doing for a few months, you're healthy, you're feeling good, then that may be something that works for you. However, in general, if keto, your main goal is weight loss, you can lose weight without keto as well. So I won't necessarily go into kind of the pros and cons of keto, but I just want to kind of put it out there that it's probably something that you should be doing for several months and being at a healthy, kind of just being healthy overall in order to be able to successfully do that. Now, paleo and plant-based. So paleo is almost like certain food groups that you're kind of incorporating and kind of avoiding. So I find paleo is quite easy to transfer over into Ramadan. You're able to kind of follow that. And then in terms of plant-based, so plant-based, the challenge with plant-based is like you mentioned, is getting in enough calories, because it's very easy to end up being too low, because a lot of you end up eating more fruits and veggies, which are lower in calories. So always start with your protein first. So thinking about things like, your lentils, your chickpeas, beans, but then also things like tofu and tempeh, like what are your sources of protein? There are also a lot of vegetarian recipes here. And one thing I've done is incorporated the nutrition information, right? So the protein amount, the carb amount, the fiber amount, you want to make sure, even if you're plant-based, is you're getting anywhere from 20 to 30 grams of protein per meal. So at first that may seem challenging, but with a little bit of planning, you should be able to get that. So 20 to 30 grams of protein at suhoor, and then at iftar as well. But as long as you're kind of following that, you should be good. And also a lot of times when you go plant-based, it's also very easy to go very unhealthy because you can just kind of turn to all the carbs because you're saying, hey, these are all plant-based. I can just kind of turn to all the carbs. So you want to be mindful of that and kind of find the right balance of getting enough protein, fiber, and optimal veggies as well.
That's interesting. Well, now I'm going to use my prerogative, as the interviewer, to ask if you would just say a little bit about fasting with diabetes and with breastfeeding. I know you go into it in quite a bit of detail in the book, but can you condense it down? Is it, what's the key to having a successful and healthy Ramadan if you're diabetic, and the same for somebody who is choosing to breastfeed during Ramadan?
Yeah, so I will put this disclaimer out there that, of course, we have the exemption if there is any sort of illness or any concern that will impact our health and our health safety when fasting. So if you find that if you're going to be fasting and you have and beyond even type 2 diabetes and breastfeeding, if there's any sort of condition that's going to impact your health in Ramadan, then of course we have that exemption. However, in my experience, I found number one with type 2 diabetes, many people have, they just stop going to their doctors and they secretly fast. Right. So I see this across with a lot of health conditions. I actually just spoke to a client just the other day, and she was telling me, I asked her if she spoke to her doctor about fasting. She said, no, I'm not going to, because they're just going to tell me not to fast. So there's a huge disconnect there. And that's actually another thing I've been working on, is working with a lot of non-Muslim professionals on how on how to improve their cultural competence in order to speak to patients so that you're able to figure out, okay, when is it safe for them to fast and when is it actually not safe, right? So with, so going into type 2 diabetes, if you are healthy and living with type 2 diabetes, in the sense that you're not having a lot of low blood sugar episodes, not a lot of high blood sugar episodes, then you can fast. You can fast in a safe way. The biggest concern of fasting in Ramadan when you have type 2 diabetes is that low blood sugar level episode, right? The hypoglycemia. So you should be very clear on those signs and symptoms of what a hypoglycemic episode looks like. And that's a very clear sign that you need to be breaking your fast, right? So we don't want to compromise, because that can be very, very dangerous. So that's for type 2 diabetes. And that's kind of what I went through in that book. So ideally, I mean, now we're only 2 weeks away, but for someone, say, who is living with type 2 diabetes and does want to fast, at least 1-2 months beforehand, they should be kind of looking at what are their blood sugar levels looking like? Are they able to safely fast? Maybe even doing a couple trial fasts, right? The other piece is also, like, when you do have a health condition, maybe you're able to do 5 fasts or 10 fasts in the month. It might not be, your goal might not be the full 30 fasts as well. At the end of the day, the health is very important. And also any condition where you're currently taking medication during the daytime, right? Any condition. And so can you change it over to suhoor or iftar time? Can you switch over the medication schedule? Sometimes with type 2 diabetes, you're taking insulin or medication multiple times in the day, right? But a lot of times it's lining up with the meals you're eating. So sometimes you do have to speak to your doctor to figure out, okay, how do I change my medication and do it in that way? So I find, having a practitioner that's understanding is super helpful. And then breastfeeding. So breastfeeding is, of course, not a health condition, but the good thing about breastfeeding is there is once again, very simple, clear signs if it's your milk is essentially drying up. So you start feeling it, your baby's fussy, the diapers are, not getting as wet. So there's all these signs that mothers are really in tune with. So you're able to instantly say, hey, I'm not going to fast anymore. And so that's something to always remember. Okay, what are the signs of it not being safe for me? And also remembering the huge impact nutrition has on how you will feel, on your health conditions, for breastfeeding women, maintaining your milk supply. So if it's important for you to be able to fast, you need to be very particular about your suhoor, about your iftar. You can't just, breeze through suhoor, iftar, eating whatever you want, hoping that, with this added condition that you'll be able to fast, because that's very unrealistic and that's harming your health as well. Another one I will say that is not talked a lot about in the community is eating disorders. So eating disorders a lot of times go undiagnosed, hidden from the family. Is a huge contraindication of fasting, right? So if someone's going through an active eating disorder, and for them to go through Ramadan and fasting, that could be a huge issue as well. So making sure that you're aware and providing the support to individuals kind of experiencing this. Also, someone who maybe is taking mental health medication for any mental health symptoms, right? Once again, usually hidden, people don't want to talk about it, but if it's significantly impacting your health, this is a valid excuse, right? Being mindful of that and kind of identifying, finding either a health practitioner that will understand or a family member that will allow you to figure out the best way to kind of navigate this month.
That's all really, really good advice. So thank you so much again, Nazima, for your time. And to my audience, I'm going to screen share. You can go to the healthymuslims.com and order Nazima's excellent Ramadan guide. She's told me that it's basically US dollars, $39.99, $40, okay, plus flat rate shipping. And you should also know that 5% of the proceeds will go to the Islamic Relief of Canada. I was thinking that this is an excellent, excellent gift to give to someone you know who may be a new convert about to go through their first Ramadan, or to a child who is moving away to graduate school and is wondering how they're going to manage their first Ramadan away from home. I really think this is an excellent, excellent guide, and I do hope people will purchase it, give it as a gift. But also, you heard it from Nazima, there is a Facebook group, and you'll be able to get more information, share recipes, and all that good stuff on the Facebook page. Nazima, I cannot say often enough how glad I am that you've come up here, and I will definitely be following you on Facebook. Well, perhaps not. I'm currently off of Facebook, I will admit. I got mad at Zuckerberg and I'm taking a break. But I might send you a recipe or two. Anyway.
I would appreciate that. That sounds lovely. Thank you so much for taking the time out today to speak to me. And I look forward to being connected as well virtually.
Inshallah. So now for my usual quick plugs. Our guest for April will be our own LLSP alumna, Miss Ambereen Shafai, class of 2015. As it happens, our next Lunch and Learn program is scheduled for Thursday, the 22nd of April, and that also happens to be Earth Day. So Ambereen will speak to us about our Islamic duty of care, of stewardship towards this wonderful earth which Allah created. Also, as we're wrapping up our Women's History Month celebrations, we hope that everyone will enjoy Muslim Women's Day on Saturday, the 28th, I think it is, if I'm not mistaken, of March. And we're also ramping up our programming for Ramadan. Please keep an eye on the Karama website and or our Facebook page, as well as your email inbox for announcements of events live and recorded that will drop during Ramadan. And finally, this is good for Nazima, maybe she'll contribute. We are trying to put together a cookbook from recipes provided by our alumni. So please, if you have a favorite Ramadan recipe, especially if it comes with a good story, photo, or short video, please do send it to us at alumni@karama.org. And thank you all very much for attending. I'll see you again at the April Lunch and Learn, inshallah.